Alright guys, well, welcome back to Cobra Vids. This is the 2017 Jetta. It's the TSI, and we're going to change the transmission fluid in it. I know I've said before that the manufacturer says that you never have to change it. It's a lifetime fluid for the transmission. But you know what? I don't fall for that crap. So I got 52,000 miles on my Jetta. So actually, it's my wife's Jetta. Don't let her know I said my Jetta, because you know how they get. But anyway, we're going to change the fluid, and if you look at some techniques of doing this, you're going to see a very confusing thing where you need code readers and this and that, you know, to get the temperature up and that, you know. But you know what? I'm gonna show you how to do it flawlessly. What we're going to do, I'm going to explain my process first, and then I'm going to show you. We're going to drain out all the fluid, and then we're going to put it in a milk jug. We're going to see how much fluid comes out of it. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take another container, and we're going to fill it up to match it. And then we're going to put that much fluid back in the transmission. So whatever comes out is going to go back in. So stick with us, guys. Here it is. Okay, here's the engine. Nothing is going to be done up here. It's all going to be done down below. So I've already removed the splash guard off of the bottom of the engine. Now let me show you what we're going to have to do. This is the underneath of the engine, like duh, right? Here's the transmission pan, okay? Now I don't know if this is for any other, but look at the number right there, okay? Maybe you can compare it to yours, but that screw right there is how we're going to get fluid back into the transmission, and I'll show you how we're going to put that in when we come to that step. But most Volkswagens have a drain plug, and the drain plugs are okay. That is the drain plug for the transmission fluid. I'm going to get a pan under here, I'm going to break that loose, and we're going to drain out all the fluid that comes out. The car is at a complete level state right now, so we're going to drain that out, and we're going to let it drain until it starts to drip. We're going to watch this fluid start coming out together. I'm going to pull out the drain plug. Now some of these, like my 04, had 2 drain plugs, and I'll show you that if this one has it too. See how that fluid's coming out? I don't know if you could tell, but that is pretty dark fluid. Let me see if I can get a really, well, let me, see how dirty that is? That is very dirty considering what the new fluid looks like. Okay? That is perfect example of what I've been saying. You don't go lifetime on your transmission fluid, because you are going to destroy your transmission. So here's the first drain plug, and I'm going to see if there's another one up in there like I have seen on my 04 transmission I had. See it's coming out pretty good. I'm gonna remove the filler bolt. Hopefully that will help allow it to come out. Oh yeah, it's coming out now. We're just going to allow that to all drain out. It looks like it's getting down to the second drain plug, if we actually have one. Once it stops flowing, then we'll really check that out, because it looks like it's stopping. That's definitely not all the fluid that comes out of this transmission. I'm going to go ahead and stop the video, check for the next one, and we'll be right back. Okay, I've got a regular Allen bit, And look at that. That is the secondary drain plug. Now look how much more it pours out. Okay, that's the flow you want right there. And you can tell that is dark fluid, man. Very dark fluid. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sit here and I'm going to watch the level and make sure my pan doesn't overfill. Probably not. This usually holds you know, 4 or 5 quarts of oil when I do oil changes. But I'm going to sit here and watch it, make sure, and then I'm going to put this drain plug back in just to, well, actually, it looks like it's going to slow down right there. Very cool. All right, guys, I'm going to let that finish dripping out and draining out, and then we'll go over the tools I use to pull these drain plugs out when I come back. All right, guys, before we get started, tools that I use to drain it. This is a T55, and it's a Torx socket. This is what you use to remove the fill plug that I showed you. This here is a T30, and this is also a Torx socket. And this is what you use to remove the metal drain plug. This one is a standard Allen socket, and this is bought from Harbor Freight, and it shows CRV 5, and that is the socket I use to remove this here. And what this is for is when you fill it the way that the factory tells you to fill it, you would put this back in, and then you would fill the transmission up until the fluid comes up and dumps over this line here, okay? And then you would, and the way you would tell is because you would put fluid in it until it starts to drip out of the hole because it is hollow. And then you would know that the fluid is up to this level. And then you would start it up, run it, well, stick the drain plug back in. You would start it up, run it, use a code reader to get it to a certain temperature, and then you would be like, okay, it's at that temperature now. So now, with it running, you remove that drain plug, and if a little bit of fluid pours out of it, you know you're good. But if just a little bit dribbles out what's in this here, with it running, then you know the level's too low. And then you add just a little bit more to get it to pour out. And then you allow it to stop pouring out, put the drain plug in it, and you're done. But what we're going to do is we're going to do it very simply, okay? When that's all done draining, I'm going to take this, reinstall this, and this doesn't get torqued in, guys, okay? This just gets twisted in and lightly finger tight. And then you stick the drain plug in there. And then what we're going to do is use that fill hole, and we're going to pour our new fluid in there using a hose and a funnel. And then we're going to get it, we're going to put as much in as we got out. Now, there was a little bit that leaked out on my hands and stuff, but we're not really worried about that little bit. We're not worried about that at all. We're just worried about getting the majority back in. This is the tools I use. Very simple, guys. I'll show you the funnel setup that I'm going to use when I get to that as well. Okay, so I'm going to pull the pan out now. Okay, guys, here is the fluid that came out of the transmission. It looks like a quart, maybe 2 quarts. Now, that is not nearly all the fluid that came out of there. So, in order to get all the fluid, I'm going to have to drop the pan out. And then we're going to have to pull the filter out, and that will unleash the rest of the fluid. Okay, so we got the pan off. There's several 10mm bolts, and it's got a really nice seal on it, and we're going to reuse the seal. I cleaned it up with alcohol. But when you have your pan off, it's a really good thing to go ahead and clean the magnets and clean out the pan so that if there's any shavings or anything in it, that it can be cleaned out. Now, this pan is ready to go back on. I'm going to just set it face down. Here, top up, down, however you want to look at it. And we're going to go ahead and leave it here. until we're ready to put it back on. Now we're going to go back underneath. Here is the valve body, and right about there is the filter. And I'm going to have to take a couple bolts off the filter, and then it's going to pour out even more. And that much more fluid came out. So now we've got quite a bit more fluid out of the transmission than we did when we first started. We're not going to mess with the valve body at all. We're just going to probably use a rag and clean up some of the old fluid just to make sure that we get as much as we can out of it. And then we'll put the pan back on it after we clean the surfaces, and we'll start filling it up. Going good so far. Okay guys, after dropping the pan, dropping the filter, this is how much fluid came out. It is not nearly the whole amount of fluid that is in that transmission. There's probably another 2 quarts of fluid in that transmission inside the drums and clutches and everything. There's still some fluid in there, but we're not going to get it all. And I'm not really worried about the old fluid that's left in there, because we're going to be putting a bunch of brand new fluid in there. It will mix together, and it'll be just fine. I'm not worried about too much. And since we're not waiting till 120,000 miles like a lot of people do when they start having slippage because they relied on that OEM lifetime transmission, the fluid is not that bad. It is very dirty, but it's not that bad. So I'm going to go ahead and mix brand new fluid with what's left in there. And when I change it again in 30,000 miles, it's going to just get cleaner and cleaner as I change them every 30 to 40,000 miles. I'm going to mark this jug. I'm going to mark it, but I'm going to mark it a tad bit higher so that I add a little bit, because you know, there's some that's left in the pan, there's some that splashed on the garage floor, on all my rags and stuff, cleaning up the oil pan, drains out of the filter, blah, blah, blah. So I'm going to account for that spillage, just about that much more than what's in here. And as soon as I mark it, I'm going to pour this fluid out, and I'm going to pour it into another jug. I'm going to pour a little bit of new fluid in here, slosh it around, pour that in there so we get as much of this old fluid out of this milk jug as we can. If the transmission has just a tad bit, maybe a quarter of a quart more fluid in it, that's fine. It's when you have like a quart more than it's supposed to, that's when you start having problems. But as long as it's just a little bit, we're not going to have any problems at all. And I expect many more miles out of this transmission. Okay guys, now you can tell the difference. I know probably on camera you really can't see how clear red this is. You can actually see it right there. And then you look at this stuff and it is really dark. So it took just under 3 quarts of fluid. Tell you just a second how much fluid it's supposed to have in there for a complete fill. Okay, so here's my apparatus for adding the fluid. I got the fluid level up in the funnel, and it goes down and it tapers down into a smaller portion of my funnel. And I have the line going down there, and since this is such a small line, it's going to take a while to get all the tranny fluid in there. But I've got the pan torque down, and the book says 9 foot-pounds, but I don't know if I'm happy with that, so and torqued it down to where I felt was right. That's all I could do. That felt better to me. But that is the torque that all of my research said it was. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead and get all the fluid in there, and then we'll give it a test fire. See if it goes into gear, or see if I fucked it all up. All right, guys, now it is time for the fire up to see if we have gears, or to see, like I said earlier, if I fucked it all up. Okay, we're gonna fire it up. See all the lights go off. Why is my... Oh, that light's on, and that light's on because I had the battery disconnected. Alright, so we'll back up. Got a nice reverse gear, feels strong. Neutral, nice smooth engagement for neutral. Okay. Alright, we're gonna have to get the we're gonna have to get my code reader and take these error codes out, because they are not error codes. I had the battery disconnected, so something's throwing those codes, but we'll figure that out. But anyway, guys, we're gonna go take it for a ride.